Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Advanced Motion Tracking in Mocha and Adobe After Effects. Cameron Begi here from Alico, and it's 9 o'clock Eastern Time. This session will be about 3 hours. So let's begin. I'm going to close my welcome screen, and let's take a look at our assets for today. Today I have a few different assets and show you guys how you can motion track in Adobe After Effects. Let's just start with something simple, something very simple. I'm going to start with this video called table. So this is a table I have here. And if I play the clip, by the way, this clip is decent resolution, is 1920 1080 and is at 30 frames per second. And is very straightforward. What I want to do, I want, for example, to place something on top of the table. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a 3D object. It could be selecting the surface of a table to be able to change the color, change the reflection, removing a reflection. Meanwhile, I can kind of track the wall and, for example, track the plug on the wall and try to remove the plug from the wall. That's going to be tricky. Tracking it is easy because I have a good contrast. But what's difficult with the plug is after I remove it, then what? I need to make sure the background is have very clean edge in there. So that means I have to create some sort of background with a gradient and fillets. That's a completely different way of approaching it. So right now, the only option I have for this class, just show you how I'm going to track this thing. Now you literally can grab your phone. This is how I use my own iPhone. So it's not a video that has to be shot professionally. No, as you probably can tell, the lighting is off the window and just a table at the home. I just use the iPhone to do that. So if you're stuck at home and you want to do some cool stuff, just grab your phone, capture something on the table, and just bring it in. So let's try this. I'm going to create a composition based on this video. Simply, I will grab the clip and I drag it inside an empty timeline. This will create a composition, and After Effects call it the same composition as the clip. However, for simplicity, I'm going to rename the composition from table into camera tracker. Or the best, I could just type a tracker here. It's called camera tracker. There. Since I have a camera tracker, we're going to look at the tracker panel. Window, tracker. Now, I'm going to undock the panel, bring it right in the middle. I'm going to explain a few things how this thing works. For example, if I select a video clip, I have 4 options here. The options I have called a track camera, track motion, warp stabilizer, and a stabilize motion. However, if I create a mask inside this clip, and I'm just going to turn my mask off. You don't need to actually have the mask enabled. I have a different panel. The tracker changes. So if I select the actual clip, I have 4 tracker options. If I select the mask, I have a different tracker. Pay attention to this part because sometimes you need to track in specific objects using mask, and sometimes you need to track basically the whole thing. So I'm going to do the mask later on with the different exercise. So I'm just going to get rid of the mask to just let you know that that's what I have. Now, about the tracker, something about tracker you need to know is because these options, each option does one specific things. For example, if I select the stabilize motion designed so you can track and spot and stabilize it. For example, if I show you a scene here from one of my cinematic classes I have in Adobe After Effects, is called Motion Tracker class. I think it's lesson 10, and here it is. These are clips from a movie called The Traitor. Traitor is a Hollywood movie, as you can see if I put my tracker on the side. And this is the first shot that this kid walks to the balcony and basically say goodbye to his father. His father gets to the car, and then the moment he closed the door, look what happened to the people outside in a market. Wait for it there. Everybody running and ducking around, and looks like something happens. Well, because the next scene of a movie, the moment he closed the door of a car, the car's supposed to explode. And here it is. Your job, and there's a couple of things happens. First of all, you can see there's a lot of wires and everything else in there, and that car be replaced with another car. And of course, those people being replaced with the dummies, and then they explode the car just like this. Well, you need to line up these two footages. How are you going to do that? With a stabilizer. You have to stabilize the car, make sure this car and the other car, they line up over each other. That's the tricky part. They're very different. The angle is correct, but the height of a camera is moving. That's why we use the motion stabilizer to stabilize the motion, so make sure the two cars line up when you are working with a tracker. The other option called a warp stabilizer. Warp stabilizer is designed when you have a shaky camera and just want to stabilize it. After Effects needed reference points to be able to do that. It does it automatically itself. You're able to adjust a few things like, make it smoother or rougher if you need to. And brings us to these two, track camera and track motion. Now let me ask you this question. When I'm playing this video, what exactly is moving? Is the statue of David moving? Or the table is moving? Or this little whatever it is moving? No, the camera is moving, isn't it? So the option in here is track camera. If your camera was on a tripod and then somebody is running or an object moving, like a car is moving or a bus is moving, and you just want to change the logo on the side of a bus, then you have to use a track motion. But in this case, I'm going to select track camera. When I select the track camera, After Effects use a track camera filter using a 3D camera tracker filter, and it needs to analyze the clip in two steps. Step one, analyzing a clip, and step number two, it try to figure out where the 3D points on the space are. There's a little frame counter inside the filter. You keep an eye on it. If you see the frame counter doesn't move or gets stuck, then your computer is either very slow or it crashed for some reason, or the clip is no good. But once it's done, you should see a bunch of dots on the clip. As I'm moving or playing this video by using the look, when I'm playing the timeline, those track pointers disappear. Let me select the option here. They call the bounding box. There, see it on the preview? If I turn it off and I play the timeline, I lose my track points there. I have to kind of scrub it. I don't want to do that. I want to play it full screen and be able to see what I'm doing. So I select this composition panel and I expand it to this. So when I play it, look what happens. These are the points that Adobe After Effects choose. I told you that selecting a plug is easy. See? Now, what you guys see when I move my mouse on the screen? This. I'm not selecting anything. I'm not clicking on anything. I'm just moving the mouse on the screen. As I'm moving the mouse on the screen, Adobe After Effects creates some sort of 3 references for me. In order to track any object, you need 3 points of reference. So if I want to put something on the surface of this table, I need to pick a 3 point of reference on the table that has a proper perspective. If I select the wrong one, for example, this one, whatever I type in there, let's just say I'm going to type my name there. I want to put a text on a table. If I put a text or a logo on a table, what's going to happen is the logo going to be lined up on top of this shape, which is wrong. I want to put it on top of the table, so I need to find a 3 point of reference on a table. This is not as easy as you think. I'll see what I can do here. See, that's not good because one of the point of reference actually connected to this object. I should be able to find something eventually. No. Sometimes when I move the frames to the different angle, like at the beginning of a timeline, oh, I think I found something. That's actually not too bad. I had it there before. Where are you? Oh, there's one. That's not too bad. There's one here. I just don't know which one is connected to which one. This one right there. There. That's the correct one. Why? Because I have 3 point of reference on the table. Nothing to do with the object. I mean, this object has an edge. If I zoom into it, the points are not exactly at the bottom of the table. If it was, I could select that, but it's not. So I need to select the point. Once I choose this point of reference, I'm able to move this circle. Look what happens when I move it on a circle, on a table. Notice that this is called a plane, that if I put any object on it, it has a proper perspective of the actual table. So that is correct. This is a correct perspective. Very important to get this thing right. And once I've done that, I selected the point I want. I right click on this triangle. I have multiple options. Create text and camera. Create solid and camera. Create null and camera. Create shadow catcher and camera and light. I'm going to grab the option called create text and camera. Now the moment I select text, I have a text layer and I have a camera layer called a 3D camera. My text is in 3D layer. You've probably seen it, that there's a cube at the end of it. If I expand it and extend the transform, everything I have in a normal transform being basically tripled. For example, my anchor point now has 3 numbers, X, Y, and Z. I have a position has X, Y, and Z also. My scale has also 3 numbers. And orientation. See, my rotation changed into orientation with the 3 sets of numbers. And then I have an X, Y, and Z rotation. And then I have the opacity, which is a normal. The only thing haven't changed is the opacity. So if I grab the text here and I want to move it, I have to use one of these 3 guys here. Definitely, I'm not going to touch the Z one because this one moves in the depth in there. All I want to use an X and Y. So I'll place the mouse on the X, and I should be able to move the text, and I can put it on the Y, and I bring the text a little bit lower. So I'm going to move this thing right here. Let's just say I want to rotate the text and I want to align the text to the actual table, to the edge of a table. Well, that's pretty easy for me. How can I rotate the text, for example, counterclockwise this way? Let me use a different color for this so it's easy to see it. For example, I want my text to line up with this edge of a table right here. Don't you think I need to rotate my text clockwise? And exactly from what axis? This is the one, isn't it? I need to rotate this one. If I rotate this thing, then text will rotate based on this axis. It's funny, in normal computer graphics that you're dealing with, unless you're a 3D graphic artist and working with 3D programs, you don't have three of these things, and we get used to rotating object clockwise or counterclockwise using a simple rotation. The thing in 3D, when I select the rotation, I can rotate an object this way. Look. Why? Because that is the X, this is Y. Sorry, this is Y. And this is Z. Again, I have to be on it. If I'm, by the way, if I'm not on the Z, X, or Y axis, I'm able to rotate the object in all dimensions. Now that becomes a tricky one because you're gonna lose a perspective. So I place the rotation tool on the little arrow. When I see a Z on it, I should be able to rotate it. If I want to drag it down, I press V to get my selection tool, and I see a little arrow with a Y on it. I bring it down. Have you noticed After Effects keep the perspective exactly correct? Now I'm going to use the edge of a table as my baseline. I press W again to get my rotation. I grab the Z and I try to rotate it the best I can. Now some of you might say, isn't it easier for you if you, for example, place your anchor point on the left side or the right side and then rotate it from the angle to line up the rotation? You're absolutely correct, but you're also missing something. I believe if I go to my window paragraph panel, I'm at Center Justify. Center Justify helped quite a bit for when I'm typing, the text will be perfectly in center. But if I click on a left justify, now the anchor point goes on the side. I'm not going to manually move the anchor point. I have to use the paragraph panel. So with the paragraph panel, I should be able to correct it. Then I reposition it. So let me first of all put the text right at the edge of a table. I'm going to zoom in. As you can see, everything I'm doing here now today is try to be as precise as I can. So that's the bottom of a text. So I need to rotate it just a bit. There we go. Some of you are probably going to say, is it easier to use the property for rotation? Probably is. If I zoom in, because that's the edge of a table, I can just grab the last number and increase or decrease it. Yep, that's the one. This is the Z, the last number. Now in After Effects, if I hold the Shift key, when I'm placing the mouse on a number, the number moves in by 10% at a time. That's not exactly what I want to do. But if I hold the Control key, I can go with a decimal. Look. Done. This cannot get more precise than this. This is the most precise I can get to the edge of a table. If I move it around, you can see that's exactly at the edge. Now, once I've done with this thing, all I need to do is put it in the middle, put the text anywhere I want. And by the way, I can go to the character panel. I think I had my character panel somewhere here. If I don't, then I'll need to go get it. Remember, I didn't type the text myself. In After Effects, when you use a type tool and you type a text, what happens is After Effects actually opens the character and paragraph for you. But in this case, it didn't create it. By the way, if you want to make a text smaller, try to use the font size. Don't use a scale or anything else like that. Again, that's just a typical thing we do. And all I need to do, double click on a layer text is safer, just like Photoshop. And I type my name. And if I play it, my name is on the table. Look. Of course, I'm going to turn this thing off. And it doesn't look good at the moment because, again, I care about the tracking at the moment, not the rest of it. If I want to make this thing look pretty good, then I will change the text color into, for example, red color. And then I change the blending mode, for example, to multiply. And this looks like my name is being carved in there or being printed on it. You guys can see the reflection pass through it too. I can also change this thing to, for example, soft light, and then use the eyedropper and pick a color from a table, maybe a darker brown from a table. That looks too dark. I'm gonna use a lighter one. Nope, it's still too dark. There, something like this. So I can kind of like put it in there. Looks like he's there. Again, this needs a bit of a push and pull for you to pick the right color for it. Definitely having a preview on and moving things around, I should be able to get something very, very similar. So it's there, but it's not that a big deal. Then I can apply some sort of blur to it because the edge of a text needs to be diffused. So I'll go to distort, and there's so many filters I can use to smear it, to do something, to make it a bit ripple, smear the edge by applying a bit of a number to it. This can make the edge a little bit more rough. And I'll select the absolute normal, above average, loose. Yeah, I don't want to make a liquid. And this is fine. The linear is fine. Has a smooth. Yeah, make a slight difference to the edge. It doesn't really look as much. And I can select a layer mask to choose that one from. To also add something to it. I can put a little mask on it. Or one of the better options is applying a slight blur to it, horizontal blur. Just something like, I think a fast box blur will do. Make it into a horizontal one. And let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. Again, the number is too much. I hold the control key when I'm moving the number. This looks diffused enough. Yes, it is. There. At the end of the day, you guys can open a transparency, opacity, and just reduce the opacity. So it looks like my name was basically etched into the table, and it's right there. Take a look. Now this could be done with a logo. I mean, you don't have to use your name. I can just use a logo. The logo is a little bit more trickier because I told After Effects to create a tracker, but don't worry about it. The tracker, the camera tracker, is a filter. So if I go and select my table again, I can just select the same point I had here. Where was that point? Where were you? You were, oh, right there. I have to move it around until it needs to pick it up for me. Let's see if I can do it manually by shift clicking these three guys. Yeah. If I right click on it, I should be able to create something called null. Now, null object is an invisible object that we use a lot in Adobe After Effects. Now, the beauty part of a null object is, as you can see, is there and is invisible. But I can use a null to link it to something else because it has all the motion tracking data in there. As you can see, it has all the settings and has very much all the material options as well. If I go and grab a logo, let me just import a logo for you from the Yellow Online motion tracking. Let's say I'm going to pick this logo, Illustrator logo. I'm going to turn my name off, and I grab this logo and drag it here. This logo, first of all, has to be 3D. As you can see, the transform is all two-dimensional. When I select the cube, it becomes a 3D. However, this logo is no near what I need. Now, if I move it around, it doesn't look like anything. The hardest part with this thing is you got to use these track pointers, and you got to align the logo manually so it becomes fit on a table. Obviously, this is a lot harder than appear to be. So I need to grab one thing at a time and rotate it. However, I got an idea that usually works the best. If you look at the null object, the null object has the correct settings. The null has the proper X, Y, and Z. One of the simplest things you can do, you can copy paste the numbers. If I copy paste the numbers, it should line up in theory. As you notice that the logo has a 0, 0, 0 for a rotation or orientation, but the null object has a different numbers. I don't care about the position because I will move the logo anywhere I want. I don't want to put it there. I want to put it in the middle of the table. So in this case, what I could do is I select the orientation of the logo by holding the Alt key and click on the stopwatch. Then I use a pick whip and I link it to the orientation of the null object. If I do this thing, the moment I click outside of the screen, the script applies, and voila, look. At least I got one thing right. The thing I got right is the orientation. The next thing I need to adjust, of course, is the position. I know I told you I'm going to move the position later, but moving a position of an object it doesn't look right though. It doesn't look like sitting on it though. See it moves in a different way. So I'm going to connect the position to the null object. If I want to move the object, I actually move the null. Let's take a look. See? Told you? It's going to work. And then you're going to say, well, the object is in the wrong spot. Of course, I'm not going to touch the object. That's what's called a null. Null is nothing. So I can move the null. Here it is. If I move the null, the object moves with it because they're linked. Now, if I scale the null, you guys can see what a null look like. Null is just usually a rectangular shape and has nothing there. Again, you don't need to really see the null. Null is always an invisible triangle rectangle. If I want to make a logo larger, I need to really go to the logo and need to scale it. And of course, the thing is you need to track the Statue of David there and mask that so you can put the logo under it if you need to. But this is how it look like. Obviously, I'm gonna select the, remember, if I want to move the logo, I cannot move the logo really. I need to move the null. So I'll select the null and I move the null's position down, and null will move the logo. And they're not parent, because a lot of other options are different, like a scale and everything else different. You don't want to parent it. In some cases you can, but the best thing to do is link them, link the properties. The rest of it is easy. I can grab the layer and use something like an overlay or a soft light, and there it is. I have the logo. I better turn this thing off and play it for you full screen, so you guys will see the result. See? I don't know how well you guys can see it online when I'm playing it. It looks actually very decent, like very, very good. If I zoom into it, right there, it looks like a table has that has a logo being printed on into it, just like this. So once you get the idea with the camera tracker in Adobe After Effects, is very, very powerful. You also notice there are a lot of other track pointers. For example, if I want to color correct or fix this edge of this object, or I want to change the color of this is going to be a bit tricky. If I want to change the color of the plug on a wall, still I need to motion track it. So I'm going to select something that matches the wall and the wall's perspective. For example, which one do you think is right? This looks all right to me. Let me see it. Oops, sorry. Lost it again. Yeah, these 3 points looks okay. Let me see. Come on. Come on. Yeah, that looks good. So this time I can right click on it and select solid. So what the solid does, solid creates a solid layer. If you guys look at the solid layer, I don't really care what color he made it. He made a track solid 1. So let's take a look at it. Look. Obviously, if I make this thing half transparent, you should be able to see it. Just like this. Now, because I'm going to show you guys a different exercise, this is a little bit tricky one because you need to use some sort of corner point to adjust it, and I might have to do some adjustments. But bottom line is, if I grab a pen tool and I mask it, just show you something very quick before we move on to the next one. I got multiple examples to show you, and I'm showing you a lot of options here. And again, the opacity is set to this. I can go to the solid settings. For example, change this thing to a red color, and then use a layer like a multiply it. And then I reduce this thing, and then you have some sort of plug on a wall with a different color. See? Obviously, you see this edge because I need to fix the mask. But if the and I didn't really do a good job with the mask here, just to let you know. So I need to do a proper mask feather, and I gotta do the basic contract and expand. You know the rest of it. So I can just do something really nice with this. So the wall plug can be changed the color if you needed to. Can be corrected. So this is one option I just showed you with the tracker. It's called the track camera. This is one of the easiest one, by the way, I just showed you. Every exact example, I'm just going to make it a little bit harder and harder, and until we get to the part that you can say, oh my God, this is really a nightmare. I have a 3-day motion tracking class So it's a 3-day full-time. That's what I usually teach in a class. I don't go to this part anyway in that class, like how to blend stuff like that. I'm showing you way more here, but I'll try to show you more of a funnel product in this case. So I'm gonna close this project. I don't need to save anything. No. I'm gonna import this clip, this clip, and this clip. What I have here, I have a video of these two gentlemen here, dressed up very nicely. And they're acting, apparently. And I have a photograph, a PNG transparency of this mask. And I have an eye patch. Also, again, these are done in Photoshop. I don't really need a transparency background, but you guys get the idea. They are transparent. Again, your mileage varies based on how good your selections are and how you mask it in Photoshop and so on. I'm going to make a new composition based on the clip. And this is called The Two Assassins, Paris 1920. I think they dress more like a 1820 or 1720. But anyway, I'm going to rename this thing to Mask Tracker. First of all, I need to track their faces, because what I want to do, I want to attach the mask to their faces. So their faces need to be tracked. So I'm not really sure which guy actually is easier for me to track it. Doesn't matter. I'm going to go with the guy on the right side, my right side, this guy. Okay. First thing I need to do is I need to track his face. Because if I be able to track, okay, first of all, let's just start with this thing. If I need to put this mask on this guy's face, I can just, I mean, you're probably thinking, why don't you just put this layer on top of it? And then, of course, the size is very big, and I need to scale it down. This is more like a Photoshop work now, right? So I'm going to zoom in and line up the best I can over his face. The thing is, because he's moving, I need this mask to track his face so I can link them. The problem with this thing is, I need a reference point. So what part of his face I can use as a reference point? Usually eyes are a good idea, but also eyes that have an inner and outer section to it. For example, I can track these points usually on someone's face, and it works really well. This inner with this inner, the outer with the outer. I can track the nose. I can track the eyebrows. I can track the mouth. All of these parts can be tracked. So you've probably seen it sometimes in the movies. They put a lot of dots on someone's face as a person turns around because they just want to make sure they get all the parts. So in this case, I'll select the clip. And I make a mask on his face. His face probably looks more like an elliptical shape, so I will use an ellipse. Of course, I want my mask to be a working mask, not the real mask. Working mask means I just call this thing face. And this mask doesn't do anything. All it does, it led me to select his face. Now I need to track his face. I don't know if he moves his chin or not. I'm not going to take a chance. I'll make the mask a little bit wider than what I want. But I should have enough information for After Effects to be able to track it. So here it is. I make my mask like this. He has a really wide chin here. So I need to make sure everything is set properly. You don't have to be super accurate, not in this example. That's good. Now if you look at my tracker changed from the normal tracker into a mask tracker. My mask, which I call face, actually appears at the bottom here, called face. So when I click on a method, After Effects can track the position, rotation, scale, and rotation position. Even can do the skew perspective, and there's an option of face outline only or detail. I'm going to go with the detail because I need to track the eye. Okay. I'm going to click on Motion Tracker Forward, and let's take a look. After Effects is tracking it. Notice that you detect the eyebrows, detect the eyes, detect the nose, detect the jaw, and the mouth. All of it. I can do a lot of things with this thing now. And this is but that's what the result is. First of all, my mask get refined a little bit. I don't remember I made that many points on my mask. I had an oval shape with the 4 points. But After Effects add 2 more, 3 more, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more points on top of my original 4 to create a more refined edge. So you don't have to make a mask very precise, as I said. As long as your mask is very decent, After Effects will take care of it. It will add more points as it goes. Let's take a look. If I expand my mask has a motion path which is track his face, which is normal. We've done that a lot. But when I expand the effects, there's a filter called face and face track points. I have a left eye, right eye, nose, mouth, and cheeks and chin. When I expand it, I have a data keyframe for all of those points. I know this sounds a little scary at first when you look at these things. I say, oh my God, what I'm going to do with all these keyframes? Well, you ask for a motion tracking, and these are a number of the keyframes that I have. Now, I don't need to use all of them. Oh, no. Far from it. What I need to do is I need to pick a spot, one point that works the best. For example, if I want to put a mask on the guy's face and track it properly, I can attach the mask to very much any of these keyframes. I can attach it to the eye, to the inner eye, to the outer eye, to the center of the eye. Center of the eye is a little bit tricky. Be careful because the guy might move his eye to the left and right, and we have, and eye has a little bit of a twitch. If you videotape somebody, the person's eyes keep looking around and keep moving around unless they want to look at the camera straight, which is still unreliable. Nose, same thing. But one point that eyebrows, especially eyebrows, we use our eyebrows in micro expressions a lot. Nose and a mouth, the same thing. One part that you cannot change unless I don't know, you have very special movement in your muscles in your face, is the inner or the outer part of the eye cannot be moved. I know if you think like I'm squinting, whatever, if I do that, I don't think I can move this point inward or outward. I'm not a doctor here. You can probably try it at home. but I highly doubt it. I think these points, the inner or outer part of the eye, is the most reliable one. Because remember, eyebrows, we move our eyebrows, we move our eyes. We kind of, I don't think we move our center of our nose. Like there was at the TV show, I Dream of Jeannie or something. She could wiggle her nose, or it was Bewitched. I think it was Bewitched. Yeah, she was moving her nose. The flare of a nose, the mouth. Yeah, definitely not. So I'm going to use a side of eyes. I'll grab my little mask here, drag it on top. Obviously, I usually start with the beginning of a timeline because my motion tracker starts from here. So it's logical for me to stay from that point. I will scale this thing down to a more manageable size. I'm not sure what size at the moment, but let's take a look. I guess needs to be scaled a little bit. This mask is awkward. You know, you can see this is a mask is very flat and a person's face is not exactly flat. So need to be warped. I'm not going to go to that part, but I just want to show you how to attach it properly to it. Now, as I said, usually what I create, you know, left eye should be okay. The left eye position. I can simply grab the mask, and the mask has two options, position and anchor point, that controls the position of the object. Working with the anchor point is a little bit tricky, but sometimes actually create a better result. So I'm able to technically connect the anchor point or position to one of these points. I'm going to go with the position at the moment, but anchor point is also doable. So I'm going to click on the stopwatch with the Alt key or Option key. I'm going into expression mode, and I'm selecting it to the left eyebrow, left eye inner. That's the one I want to connect it to. Left eye inner. The moment I click outside of the screen or on a timeline here, as you can see, the mask shifts. Because if you notice that, I use a left eye inner. That is a left eye inner, right? The moment I've done that, have you noticed the anchor point or a position of an object, the anchor point itself lines up on top of it? Like this. So let's take a look. I'm making it half transparent so you guys can see how it look like. There. Once I've got that one linked in, the next of it is a piece of cake. Because if I need to center my mask on the guy's face, I can adjust the anchor point. Of course, for an anchor point adjustment, there's a shortcut. Shortcut is Y. And I grab the anchor point. Funny is, I grab the anchor point, but I cannot move the anchor point. What I do, I'll move the object. Look. This is the craziest thing ever, isn't it? And you have to do it in the opposite direction. If I want to move it to the left or right, I just drag the mouse in the opposite direction. Now, what I'm doing there is because the anchor point is locked into that point. I know this is funny because you thought I'm going to grab an anchor point and attach the anchor point to it. But instead, I attach the position. But the position and anchor point, I told you, they're linked to each other. They are part of each other. Anchor point is a center of the position, literally. Is half the values. So I adjust this, and it's done. It is literally done. Remember, you need to adjust the mask outside of it. This mask is not exactly a great mask because I can see a lot of white edging there. Has to be done in Photoshop. I can go to right click, interpret footage, main, and let's take a look at the, I can't really do anything with the transparency because this thing has an alpha, and maybe I can just pre-multiply it or ignore the transparency. Yeah, the transparency itself is black. I don't think I can do much with it. Maybe I could just use the white edge as a transparency. It's going to be a tricky one though. I don't know if it made any difference. Yeah, I highly doubt it. But the result is done. Again, this needs to be worked. So you can use any kind of filter you want in Adobe After Effects to warp it. That's the part we have to look for. Distort, something like a bulge or warp, anything that you can create, so you can create into a spherical object. But if I play it, it should be okay. Look, let me zoom out. And again, the color is not correct because of a white balance is off. You guys can see that this is much darker than the surrounding background. It just doesn't look right from the composition and the blending mode. But this is not a class about that. It's about the motion tracking. Usually when you motion track it, you give it to somebody else to taking care of the rest of it, to blend it, make it look real. As you can see there. And also missing a shadow and everything else. Shadow should be easy to apply. Simply, I select the layer and go to the style and select layer style and shadow, drop shadow. There. This is just like a Photoshop, and you can just adjust your angle, adjust your distance, adjust your, I will go with the size, make the size much larger. And then I put the angle, I don't know where the light coming from here in this case, but I'm guessing the light is more like coming from the top. And maybe I reduce the distance, make the shadows a bit darker. And then I use an option called spread. A spread is called the intensity of a shadow. So I reduce the distance and I adjust the spread. I have to be careful with the spread and the size, otherwise his eyes is not much visible. So you need to do a little bit of practice with this, and maybe reducing opacity a bit. Yeah, the shadow does help. There, at least it's not as flat. It looks a little bit more sitting there. Again, I can sit down and spend a lot of time. Now the other guy's eye patch is literally the same thing. I'm going to skip that part with the eye patch, but you literally do another mask on the same layer. You don't have to do anything else, by the way, because you can have many different masks and you can just track it. So I can select a different mask on his face. Again, I'm gonna turn the mask off. I will call this thing, for example, left face. And also I change the color of a mask to make it a little bit different. I need to adjust my mask. This, and this should work the best. And as you notice that Adobe After Effects now has a new option for the called left face, and I can just track the left face over. Now the problem is the moment I use a left face, After Effects can only track, because the face tracker is a one filter, right? And since I already applied it to that layer, he applies it to this because he linked it. So as you can see, the link works. if you need to have two different objects that they are independent, I can motion track it, but I would recommend we create something a little bit different. For example, in this case, I track this guy's face, and it's kind of funny, isn't it? I track him, but I'm undoing it, and yeah, it's some stuff in Adobe After Effects you cannot undo. It is funny, isn't it? That the points are being transferred to the other guy's face. That's very strange. I've never seen anything like that. Well, learn something new today myself. Maybe there's a bug, because it can't be, because we decided to track the other guy's face, not him. Anyway, that's the bug. Couldn't happen like this because we never tracked him. Anyway, strange, very, very strange. We're gonna move on to the next exercise, but by the way, if just let me redo this thing to show you what happens if you have a two-person. Oh yeah, there's an error message here, because it tells me there's no action being linked to it that is correct. So let's say if I want to track two-person at a time, I'm going to remove everything here, just do it very, very quickly. I'm going to track this guy's face one more time, but I need to track someone else's face, the guy on the left side. How can I do this thing with the two faces? I use an adjustment layer or a solid layer. After Effects can do that easily. So I go to the beginning of a timeline. I already have this thing. I create a new adjustment layer, or I create a solid and then I turn it to adjustment layer. I may as well just create an adjustment layer. I create a second mask on adjustment layer. Right there. Once I create a second mask on adjustment layer, I'm not even bothering to rename it. I should be able to track this guy. Wait for it, there. After Effects tracking the guy on the left side, but would not disturb the guy on the right side, because the guy on the right side using his own layer. Now, as you can see, one of the filters is on adjustment layer. The other filter is on the other one, on the other guy's face. So this should be easily done. Just like the before, I can simply grab the picture, connect it to the left eye, for example. Where is my anchor, my position? Here it is. So I'm going to grab the position connected to the left inner eye. That's done. So if I select the layer, it goes on the original guy's face right there. And then I will grab an eye patch. By the way, I've done with these layers, this layer and this layer. Now I don't want to see them because it might cause a problem. After I lock them, I make them into a shy and I hide this shy. So they're done. The motion tracking works and everything else is there. So I don't need to accidentally touch anything. I'll go to my project and grab an eye patch, place the eye patch on the top. And obviously I will scale the eye patch to fit it on the other guy's face. Something like that will do. Which eye is it anyway? Oh yeah, the other eye. Again, this requires a bit of a working to be able to, you know, adjust the edge. I'm not sure how well I can do this thing, but not a problem. If you need to fix the edge, just make a mask on it. make a mask something like this. You know, the mask doesn't have to be anything special. You should just cut the edge out, and you can feather the mask to you know, make the edge a little bit look nicer if you have to. So that does a nice blend job. Looks like it's going under the hat. It's not too bad. Again, the color is off. That's what doesn't look very good, but you should be able to fix that easily with the color correction class that I showed earlier in the week. You can, if you guys remember that. By the way, After Effects is the same color correction that you've done in Premiere. That's right, you have the Lumetri scopes and you have the color correction Lumetri. So it's right here. And the Lumetri scopes just follow the same steps, and you're good to go. And this part is easy now because I do have the face, and this time I will use the left eye. Coincidentally, left eye, the inner eye, will work for the eye patch as well. So I open the position and anchor point. I use a pick whip, and I connect this to the left inner eye again. When I deselect the screen, the eye patch definitely shifts. You already knew that. So I'm going to use a shortcut Y and move the anchor point, and I reposition the eye patch. As you can see, the mask also moves with it, and it's done. So this is another option. If you really need to track two things, you can just apply it to the layer, or you can just apply it to the adjustment layer. By the way, the first one could be just applied to the adjustment layer to begin with. You really need to apply it to the layer itself. And here you go. I have two layers, and the eye patch looks a little bit more weird if you look at it very carefully, because the guy on the left side, he rotates his face. So this thing needs to be worked a little bit more, but overall it's not too bad for the little thing I just done. I'm going to close this project and move on to the third example of a motion tracking. The third example I'm going to show you guys is this. This is a very different type of example. In this example, it's just a video of a car I have. What I want to do is I want to add a few things. You probably see it in Discovery Channel or commercials that an object like the car moves on a side, and then as the car moves on a side, there will be some sort of banner, like, you know, the little banner appears here, and it says, for example, white wall tires, and then pointing a little line to it. And as the car moves, the line is attached to the tire of a car. And then, for example, we put a little thing called chrome restoration, and then we pointing a line again to this chrome here. Now, of course, in order for the video to move and this text moves with it, and there's a line pointing to the specific spot, we need to track the tire of a car or the chrome of a car. And this is a much trickier than those two previous videos I showed you. First of all, the tire constantly rotates and changes the perspective. And then the chrome doesn't exist very much here and then appears later on. Well, there's a little bit of chrome here, but doesn't look pretty good. Or let's say talk about headline restoration. Something like that need to be applied from a certain time to certain time in a timeline, not constantly. And the same thing with the tire. Tire stops around here. This requires something called a point tracker in Adobe After Effects. Now, what are the point trackers? The third type of a tracker used in movies more often than the previous trackers I showed you. Sure, the mask tracker is usually used for tracking someone's face, to change the color, change the eye color or something else, because you cannot put a dots or a reference points on someone's eye, or a building. You cannot just put a dots on a building to track the building or a car. So those are the ones they use. However, what about the green screen? This motion tracker method I'm going to show you in a very basic form is designed when you have green screen. Now let me look at a green screen lesson here. No, as for black, no, no, yes, that's the one. Green screen ProRes 422. Let's take a look at this one. There. Now in this case, the background is a green screen. They put a bunch of dots on them, a brighter shade of a green. And what's happening is the camera rotates, and something happens in the background, and they looks like some sort of explosion, and then try to duck from it, which is fine. The thing is, the dots in the background represent how much the camera moves, because when you have just a solid green, you don't know how the camera rotates. You can see people in front of it, but creating a rotation based on people is a bad idea. Because if you try to put a fake background behind the scene, let's say a city background or something like that, that will cause a major headache due to the fact that the perspective is off. So we need to track those points. The next tracker in Adobe After Effects, called track pointers, lets you to track those points. Of course, this is a very hard one to remove, because once you pick a track pointer, some of these track pointers goes through their head, and that's making it much harder to select it. You've probably seen in movies, they have crosses and the dots in the back. That's what this thing is for. In a very basic form, I'll try to track something and connect it to this tire air valve. Wow, it looks like a dice, isn't it? Yeah, it is a dice. Nice. So I'll go to the beginning of a timeline, and I'll go and select the option called track motion inside the tracker. When I select track motion, Adobe After Effects opens a layer for me automatically, and it gives me a one tracker pointer. Now the track pointer track points like the green screen when I showed you. You need to have something that has to be visible and has to be preset. In this case, my mileage varies based on how good this dice actually is. The tracker works based on few options. These are options a tracker can track objects, or points technically, not objects, based on RGB channel, luminance, or saturation. Depends on the lighting of a scene, or how people can, what software they use, and what kind of tracking they want to use, what kind of features they want to add to it. They decide to put those ping pong balls on different surfaces with a different color. In this case, this should be all right if I keep it to RGB, not luminance, because is easier. Luminance probably works really well when I'm dealing with a chrome part of the car. So I will move my tracker pointer forward. As I'm moving it, the track pointers give me a little magnifying glass, by the way, which is kind of cool. Right there. If I zoom into it enough, you don't see the magnify, but if you zoom out, they'll see it show you a little magnify. I usually zoom in. So let's talk about this track pointer, what exactly it does and how should I use it. First of all, the inner rectangle is the one that After Effects tracks the area for you by looking at the textures, the patterns, and it tracks that object for you. So this is a bad idea. I want to make sure the pattern is visible, and especially the color outside of it has a very unique RGB, because this is a red and outside of it is kind of grayish. So After Effects should be able to track it decently. There is a plus in the middle. That plus is the point that Adobe After Effects actually creates a keyframes in that spot. So your anchor point is literally here. Don't move that dot unless you have a special idea. And then the outer rectangle controls is called the tolerance. So what's a tolerance? Tolerance means if I go from one frame to the next frame, and if the camera shakes enough and this dice appear outside of the outer rectangle, then After Effects cannot track it for you. So the outer rectangle is based on how much camera movement applies. In this case, the camera moves very smoothly, so I don't need to worry about it too much. But remember the car explosion I showed you earlier from a movie trailer? Whoa, that's the hard one, because you got to use a car headlights or a front bumper or a window or a side mirrors, and the explosions, and it creates a lot of headache. This looks good to me. Then I will look at the option the tracker needs. Position is good enough. I don't need a rotation scale because camera doesn't pull back and forth and camera doesn't rotate. So that looks good. All I need to do, I zoom out a little bit and track it forward. After Effects, as you can see, tracks it. It locks into it. If something goes wrong and my tracker doesn't look good, I will stop it immediately. The moment tire, I can stop it at any time I want. The moment tire is rotating enough, because remember the car is rotating and a dice in here becomes invisible eventually, After Effects will lose track. So I need to stop it back then. So I'm going to go forward. Wait for it. Notice that it's start losing track. If it's not losing track, I need to go back, not by using an analyze icon. I use the shortcut like an up and down arrow key, a page up and down. Up to this point is actually pretty good. After these points, it starts getting a little bit off. So I can correct the size of it, give them a little bit more room to maneuver, and I can go and override all the next keyframes. That looks a little bit better. I can constantly correct as I go forward. You can go frame by frame. This is a time consuming and expensive. But every movie, that's better, isn't it? And eventually it stops because you can't see it anymore. I've got the information. If I'm happy with the tracking information, I apply it. Everything looks good. If I go to my timeline, expand it, After Effects already applied the tracker pointer, give me all the data I need. I'm going to close my layer, and all I need to do in here is just create a layer. I'll create a new, what should I do? Do I need a layer or I need a composition? You know what? I got a better idea. I'll create a rectangular shape. Oops, I shouldn't select the layer, right? I just need a shape. Here it is. I right click on a shape, select pre-composition. I'll call this thing banner. So I go to my banner, and this is a shape. I'll create a text layer here. I just call this thing white wall tire. I don't need to type it in to simplify this exercise, and I'll make my text white so it's easier to see it. Put it right on top of it. Paragraph center justified, that looks good. Just gonna make my character look bit smaller to fit right in the middle of it. Something look like this. Now my shape could be off. I show you a little trick there. This is center of a composition. So I will select these two guys and move it to the side. And I might just make a line also. The line should be done with this. As you can see, I use a pen tool, just draw a line, and I'll make this stroke to the white is fine. And I can just go to the shape. And if you want, I can open the shape 1, path 1, a stroke, change it to the round cap. So the line is not, see, is not hideously flat, nice and round. So when I go back to my screen, it looked like this, right? Again, I'm making it super basic here. Some of you probably prefer to put this thing underneath of the other one. You can prefer to, I don't know, make the line longer or shorter. Doesn't matter. Again, I'm trying to simplify it here. This design of this banner itself could take a couple of hours if you want to do a good job. But what I want to do, I want to link them. So when I press the position and an anchor point, there's an option called a feature center. The feature center is actually center of the anchor point. I need to connect the anchor point to it, not the position. So I will use an anchor point. Position works as well. Again, as I said, they are linked to each other. So I'm connected to the center feature. Now look what happened. As the car moves, the logo moves in opposite. Wow, that's kind of moves in opposite direction. You know what? I'm going to connect it to position. This should fix it. By the way, you need to write a script to -1 into it if you go with the anchor point, because anchor point always going backwards. Look what happens. Yeah. If you remember, when I use the anchor point tool by pressing Y, when I move the anchor point downward, it moves upward. So you need to do a times a -1, and it should be all right. Look at it now, right there. Now, of course, I don't want to point it to the dice. What I want to point it to the tire, not the dice. The dice was the point that I want to track it. So I can use an anchor point and then here, point it to the tire. So when I play it, look what it looked like. I'm going to start with the next project. Just going to close this project completely. And I'm going to clean up my workspace. I just choose my Cam's March Special. There we go. That's a nice clean one. I will import a file in my project. Let me go to my Alico Online motion tracking. I need to start with this one. This is an easy one to understand how Mocha works. Later, I have a couple of other clips that I'm going to show you guys that we're gonna use these guys later on. So I'm just gonna import these clips that I also need to import. There we go. So this is going to be our Mocha project. Let me show you this clip. This clip obviously shot professionally. The resolution is not exactly very high. It's 960 by 540. 24 frames per second, but it's shot in slow motion, but has a very nice colors, Apple ProRes proxy video format. And As you can see, it does have a very nice motion to it right there. And then I have another clip here, this one. And then I have a third one, this thing. I'm going to make this thing easy by selecting only one of these clips. But what I want to do, I want to put this logo on the car, on a door. Looks like this has been printed on the side of a door. Like you guys can have a video of your own car and put a racing numbers on it. You see number 5, number 4, something like that. That's you see on a racing cars, but without actually painting or putting a decal on your car. But I can put something like that on it. Once you learn this trick, you can use your phone, literally shoot a video of a city bus that moves the pass by, and make a Photoshop some sort of poster that there is a picture of you on it, says, you know, vote for as a mayor or something. Then you can just paste it on top of it, and then After Effects can track it, and then it looks like you paid the city bus company to put a banner on it, and just make your friends impressed how you can afford it like that. But I'm going to start with something simple. None of these things, trust me, can be tracked the way I showed you earlier. You can use a 3D camera tracker, whatever. After Effects cannot track these things. And this is an Ontario license plate that I made in Photoshop. So I will try to fit it at the end of this car. So I'll put a fake license plate on it. Now, as you can see, a lot of commercials, when they shoot videos like that, they shoot it in England or in Germany. They don't know where they're going to market it, or they shoot it in US, but they want to have it for a Canadian, or for Ontario only, or for a Quebec, or for Calgary. They can let you to choose a different license plate. I can track these license plate parts the way I did the tracking of the previous. Just gonna make sure, yeah, everybody's mute, so there's no audio looping there. I can track this thing, and then I can put a license plate on it. So the license plate can be faked and can be placed on the car as the car rotates. All of these things, I have to do it with Mocha, because After Effects won't be able to track it. Starting with this exercise. Now, this is an easy one because the video is not a very large dimension. It's a 720 by 480, but unfortunately the video is an interlaced video. To make it even worse, is an DVNTSC. If I magnify it, you guys can tell how bad this thing is. Look at it. After Effects try to smooth them up the best you can by try to fix the fields, but this is an interlaced video, so no matter what you do, is going to be a low resolution. I'm going to make a composition out of this thing. In this exercise, I want to create something very cool. A lot of times, this is, by the way, not a great way of doing this. If you plan to do something like this on your own home, for example, you want to create it looks like a movie Blade Runner. By the way, I'm going to do that at the after lunch. The next session, I'm gonna create a scene from a movie Blade Runner from scratch, and most of these motion tracking I'm gonna use will be applied to that to the afternoon session as well. So the monitor itself, it works the best if you make a monitor with a very unique color. For example, you guys can make the monitor into a green screen by just put a green picture on it, or go to Photoshop, make a green background, and then put a bunch of crosses on it. I could put a cross in the middle, cross on the side, and the 4 corners. All of these crosses you put in there help with the tracking. Unfortunately, whoever done this thing didn't plan for it properly, so they give us a very low quality video footage, and I end up with something look like this. If I go and do what I've done earlier with Adobe After Effects, remember the motion, the tracker panel I had? I can select track camera because technically camera moves, right? So let's take a look, see what happens. It might do it some okay job, but I'm not holding my breath. This is almost done. As you can see, I'm at 99, 100 frames. It's solving the camera. Let's see what happens. It gets some decent settings, but when it comes to the screen, I have 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point. And this is not exactly correct. You see the perspective is off. And as the video goes forward, have you noticed one of the points that I need for tracking disappeared? So look at it again. At the very beginning, I have 3 reference points. 1, 2, and 3. So these seems okay. I should be able to get away with it. These 3 triangles. But as I play the video forward, you realize I lost one of them. And then suddenly there's 3 more coming or 4 more coming. The problem with Adobe After Effects Motion Tracker with this camera tracker is it creates the tracking point for me. It won't allow me to select what I want. Remember the car? I wanted to track the tire, so I had to go pick up that red dice as a valve on a tire air valve to be able to track that specific point. That's what I said. If this one was a green screen, usually they make it green because it's easier to create a green screen, and then you can use a chroma key to knock the monitor out with whatever you want on it. But by putting a cross as an X on it, you increase the chances of having these points on it more higher. The table was easy to do, easier. As what I said, I'm going to start with the easiest one, because a table, if you remember, had so much textures on it. The wood itself had a lot of grain. The statue of David and all the little fancy stuff, they had enough track pointers that could stay within the whole thing. And look at the table here. As I'm playing it, the dots were like a Christmas lights. They turn on and off. The only thing I can track properly, decently, is whatever this white thing is. What is that thing anyway? This thing is like a telephone? This video is old, so I have no idea what this thing is. Maybe it's a radio? I remember one of those modems. I had those Motorola modems, cable modems. That's old stuff. You can see the monitors looks very old. So, brings us to tracking the surface of a screen. I need to track the monitor itself. We need to use a program called Mocha. Mocha obviously is more powerful than what the tracker in Adobe After Effects offers, but don't get me wrong by saying, why don't you use Mocha for a first or second or third or fourth example you showed us today? Well, here's the thing. There are multiple trackers available. Mocha is a planar tracker. Planar tracker means it can track surfaces of an object which are flat. It cannot track a curvature objects. For example, Mocha is very difficult to track someone's eye or a pupil part of an eye. With Adobe After Effects Mask, you can do that. Or track someone's nose, or the points that I did earlier with the two gentlemen, and I put an eye patch and a mask. Those are difficult to do with Mocha. Mocha can track their hat, or they track the building behind it, but not everything. So you have to understand what you want to track and what is the best tool you can select and track it. Obviously, Adobe After Effects Mask Tracker and a Mocha, they have something in similar. They're overlapping each other by quite a bit. But sometimes one of the trackers may not work as well as you hoped, so you have other options. That's why Adobe bundled Adobe After Effects with Mocha. Is part of it, it comes with it, it's free. So I'm going to select Track in Mocha. Mocha used to be an external program, it is, but if you have a CC 2018, Mocha didn't have a plugin, or it wasn't a filter. Mocha was a different program. You had to copy paste the keyframes. It was a nightmare. That's right. He sent the video to Mocha. You have to track it and then get the tracker pointer as a keyframe. Then you have to copy it and then apply a filter to Adobe After Effects and paste it. It was a nightmare. Today, they made it into a filter so you can turn it on or off. The beauty part of the Mocha as a filter is if Adobe After Effects can open the file, the video, Mocha can open it too. So there's no video encoder missing or anything else. I need to, of course, track it in Mocha, so I click on a Mocha icon. And what he does, he opens Mocha program. Let me show you what the Mocha look like. This is what the Mocha look like. Mine opened in the second monitor. So I'm going to maximize it. Mocha has multiple interfaces. This used to be how the Mocha looked like, the original Mocha. It's a very complicated program, and this is a normal one. The Pro one is almost the same thing, has a bunch of extra options, like 3 or 4 extra options. You guys can search online for a Mocha Pro versus Mocha, and there will be a very short list. But those short lists are very important for example, Hollywood movie level special effects. So if you have money and you want to get a motion tracker, I won't even bother with Mocha. I will get a different motion tracker. It's called the Synth Eyes. This is one of the most powerful motion trackers, and is not very expensive, by the way. These are like a couple of $100 if you want, and you can just download the free version of it. This is the one most of the movies they use. Mocha also is very useful, but the Synth Eye is a more powerful one, if you ask me. So let's take a look. I'm going to put my interface to Essentials because this makes it a lot easier and is more simplified. A couple of things in Mocha you have to understand, that I need to select an area or create an area, a bounding area that I want to track. I want to track the monitor. Remember, I want to track literally inside the area, this white screen. But I can't just tell Mocha to track the white screen for me. Why? Because Mocha track textures inside the selected area. Not much of a textures happening in there. It's just too white. That's what I said usually in the movies. Despite it's a green or a blue, whatever, they put a cross on it. That cross becomes a texture, and a Mocha can track it really well. Since there is no X on it, or a plus, is not going to help me. So I'm going to go a bit farther than what I want. I need to select the edge of a monitor. That's the tricky part. So I have options on the top. One of them looks like a pen with the X on it. As you can see, there's a multiple pen tool. These are not a normal pen tool. This is called I'm going to usually use an X spline, the pen tool. When I click with that pen tool on a screen, as you notice that it creates a straight line, and I click on the edge, and when I click down here, notice that you actually make it into a connected one. Is not the way Adobe works. I know we get used to the Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator that you have an open path when you're using a pin. Not a lot of softwares that don't work like that. Because Mocha tracks a surface, the surface must be a closed object. I told you it's a planar tracker. So they made it easy. I click here, then I right click on a screen because I don't want a fifth point. Now, obviously, this is a curve. I don't want this thing, so I can move the point out. Now, remember I told you I want to actually track the monitor, not the inner part of a monitor. And you're going to say, well, this is a curve. This has got to be a rectangle. It will be easier. Absolutely. So I grab this node at the end and I pull it. This can adjust the roundness of it. I'll need to do it for all 4 times, 4 corners. There. Then I will bring the node closer to the edge. I don't need to put it perfectly at the edge. Remember, I need to track the surface of the monitor. I need to track the texture, what's in there. Like I need this. Don't worry, I'll put the video inside the actual monitor, but I need to track it. Now this is not good enough. This is a surface of an area I'm telling Mocha that I want to track. So Mocha will look for this pattern and it tracks it. However, if I select something called a show grid, this is the most important part. This grid, if you look at the grid will appear in horizontal and a vertical part. So if I bring a logo, remember I had an AE logo, that little circle one? If I put the logo here, the logo will appear like a circle like this with the word AE on it. Okay, just imagine. As I'm tracking or the monitor moves, have you noticed that pink grid doesn't move with it? Just imagine if I don't set this thing properly, the logo will be in the middle and is not moving. That pink grid must follow the surface of a tracking area. If you don't, then the object will not work properly. So there is an option here called show surface. When I press on this little S, show surface area, I'll better turn this thing off. This is what your logo will look like. Have you noticed that the logo doesn't look like a monitor? I want a logo to be on the monitor, so the logo has to be pasted on it. But in this case, it's not. So I'll make this thing smaller. Then I can rotate it. You remember, you can adjust a perspective too. Be careful. This perspective means the logo will become angled like this. So I will make sure this look like the edge of a monitor. Now I'm guessing here. Be honest with you, I need to set it up. I'm gonna give him a little bit of distance. You don't have to make it exactly at the edge as long as it follows the perspective of the monitor. And make sure rotation, whatever you need to do, this must have a proper perspective. So let's recap. The red rectangle is what Mocha will look for and track. The inner blue rectangle is when you connect it in Adobe After Effects to a layer. That layer has a transformation values. Now look what happened when I click on a grid. Have you noticed? The grid matches. If I bring this thing down to this thing, the grid will rotate, warps. Think about it. My logo will appear like this. Let's go back a little bit to the first exercise I showed you. Do you remember I said you need a 3 reference point at the table, at the surface of a table? Then Adobe show us bunch of rotating the circles. And I said, this is the most important part. I need to pick 3 reference points on a table. So the grid has to be there. So when I put a text on it, the text follows that grid. This is the same grid. except in Adobe made it simplify by pick the points for you, and then you need to pick 3 reference points, and then making sure those circles are within a proper perspective. If you've done that, then you are good. The problem with Adobe After Effects is because it picks the points for you, make it difficult for certain surfaces to be tracked. Like in this case, the monitor, I couldn't get enough pointers for the surface of a monitor. Now I can. So once this is good, I don't need to see these guys, by the way. This is just, you just adjust it once because the monitor rotates, doesn't change the perspective. On a car is a little bit different. I'm going to go to the tracker, and I have an option for track the position, the transformation, that means X and Y. A scale is the Z depth, and a rotation, and a skew. I don't want to click the perspective. Tracker icons are easy. Tracking forward, tracking backwards. I'm going to click on track forward. Let's take a look. Mocha, pick the monitor and track it very, very nicely. It's actually pretty decent. I'm looking at the edges, eh? If something goes wrong, I need to stop and I need to correct it. Mocha creates a lot of keyframes at the right bottom corner. These are keyframe icons that, like Adobe After Effects, I'm able to fix it. It's almost there. Mocha is a very CPU tense program. There are some graphic cards are available to accelerate Mocha, but they are not like Adobe After Effects or Premiere. They don't work with all graphic cards, so you better look online for a list of compatible graphic cards. Despite I have 2 graphic cards that are the most compatible with very much anything on this laptop, when I go to preferences, there's a GPU, and it says my graphic card, despite is there, is not one of the supported ones. So if I enable it, I'm on my own. It might crash the software. I'm not going to take a chance. Besides, I like the motion trackers to work slower. You're wondering why? Because if it goes fast, I can't see it. If something goes wrong, I cannot see it. I like to go slower so I can see the edge, and I keep tracking and making sure everything looks good. So far, so good. Remember, this is a very low quality video, by the way. If I enable my surface area, have you noticed my surface area and my grid shows the monitor? If I play it, by the way, these are the playback icons, these are tracker icons, and these are the keyframe icons. So I'm going to go forward and play it. Have you noticed the grid works? Beautiful. I'm looking at the edge of the grid. The grid distance between the left, right, and the top, I'm talking about these guys. This distance right here. And this 1, 2, 3 by 3 boxes I have in the middle. I want you guys to look at these things. So the edge appeared to be almost half, and I have a 3 by 3 in there. Is that the case throughout the video? Let's take a look. It is, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, half and half. As I play the video, right there. If I had an X in the middle, and if I had, or a cross in the middle, and if I had a cross on each edge, my inner rectangle, known as the show surface tracking data, this blue one is a tracking area. That's the one provides the tracking data. Would have been better. Mine is a little bit off, by the way, when I'm looking at the bottom of it. Unfortunately, I didn't do a good job on this thing. At the very beginning, it was slightly off, but because this is just a working prototype, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to change the layer name to monitor. By the way, you can create, I'm not sure there's a limit to the layers here. Some people says 32, some people says unlimited. I don't really know. I have never selected more than 5 objects in Mocha to be tracked at the same time. So you can create a new layer here and then put a new tracker and track the table. After Effects will have access to all of them. Looks good. I'm just going to leave it to the one layer. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to exit. Of course, you're going to ask me, oh, do you want to show, you want to save it? Absolutely, I must save it. So I'll click on Save. Now, when I go to Adobe After Effects, Mocha closes, by the way. I have multiple options. I'm going to click on Create Track Data. When I click on it, he asks me what layer you want it from. Aha! Remember I told you you could have 10 different layers? You got to be careful, though. In Mocha, you can only select one layer at a time. So if you have 10 layers, you have to do this thing 10 times. I select the monitor, and you may need a different layers, like an adjustment layer yeah, most likely you need a multiple adjustment layer so you can send the data to them. Otherwise, a layer cannot have so many data in there. Okay, look what happens. I got 4 corner points in Adobe After Effects, and if I play it, make sure my player has the bounding box. If I play it, you guys see the corner points there. That was the blue rectangle. I put it at the middle of it. If you guys remember, that's called the blue inner one. That is send the data. Now, when I expand my layer in Adobe After Effects, this stage you used to copy paste it from Mocha. Thank God Adobe in CC 2019 and Boris, they made a Mocha as a plugin. When I expand it, you have tracking data, and here it is: top left, top right, top bottom, center, rotation, X and Y. X and Y doesn't work because we don't really change things too much in here. So the scale is fine. And then as you can see, there's an option for a corner pen with motion blur, and then transform. I'm going to leave it to corner pen. I would like to, for example, connect something to this thing. I create a null object. One of the best things you can do is create a null object. Remember, null object is literally an object is invisible and you can do whatever you want with it. So I'm going to grab my null and I'm going to rotate it. Oops, making sure not rotating a layer, only rotating a null. Here, I'm going to rotate the null. Come on, null. And also, I'm going to put the null right on the edge if you prefer. Doesn't have to be like that. You can put it right in the middle of it if you want to. And I can make a null smaller too. The reason I put it in the corner first, because I want to make sure the null perspective is correct. All of these things will be changed anyway when I link the null. So it's fine. I can just leave it like this. The number will be changed. So something look like this. Then I need to connect the null to this. There's an easier way these days rather than a copy pasting it. When I select the tracker, have you noticed there's an option that says corner pin? Corner pin is one of the best options you guys can use because corner pin give you a corner pin filter. Corner pin filter has 4 corners that let you to warp objects. Transform, not my favorite because it gives you a position, a scale, and rotation. That's all. But if you want to warp it, you can do that. I'm gonna go with the motion blur support. You know what? I'm gonna leave it to corner pin by default. He asked me what layer you want to export it to. I want to export it to the null. When I click on apply, if I expand my null, have you noticed that my there's an effect now called corner pin? And look what happened to my null. I did not move my null in the middle of the screen. It moved it by itself. And look what happens. Null has a lot of keyframes. I know you don't see the null moves, but the null keyframes actually do move. If I undo this thing and I choose an option, corner pane with motion blur, and I redo it again, the moment I apply it to the null, it applies it with something else at the bottom with a transform. Now, the good news about the motion blur is with a transform, because it applied the position, rotation, and a scale to it with the corner point. If the camera rotates like this, you probably notice that there's a motion blur into the camera. Right there, you guys can see this thing has a motion blur. So if I put a fake logo inside a monitor, don't you think there should be a motion blur? Selecting a transform alone only gives you the transform option. I need a corner pen, and I need to motion blur. So most of the time, either I use a corner pen or I use it with motion blur. In this case, I'm going to leave it with a motion blur. So let's take a look. Since the anchor point is off the hook, that's our scapegoat. Remember, anchor point helped me to adjust the position by pressing Y, adjusting a position of a null object. I just gotta make sure the layer is locked, and I'm grabbing a null object. You see the keyframes? So I should actually touch that one. I better just move there. Move it like this. It's very dangerous sometimes to select the wrong one, because if you grab a wrong object, it just messes things up a little bit. So once I get this thing, if I play it, I better deselect the screen so you guys can see the null itself. It's the center of the screen. By the way, if you need to do a little bit of adjustments, rotation is not part of the transform. So I can use a Shift R to add a rotation. Actually, sorry, it is. I thought I'm gonna rotate it more. You see, that's the problem when I create my motion tracker. I told you the center, the right edge wasn't exactly there. Doesn't matter. Again, this is just an exercise. I'm gonna grab something very cool. The same monitor video. This is called picture in picture. I'll put this monitor above the other one. This one. If I make the monitor child of the null object, anywhere the null goes, the other one goes. See it? I can make the monitor smaller. Okay. There are multiple ways you can do that. In this case, I'm using a parent and a child, because you remember when you have a parent, if you move the parent, the child moves with the parent. But child also is independent from the parent. The advantage of this one is it's not like the earlier exercise I've done that everything linked to each other and I had the option of using an anchor point only. No, I can grab this thing and I literally do whatever I want with it. I can rotate it. I can put it to half transparent so I can see the screen. I can put it anywhere I want, and I can scale it independently. More than all, I gotta show you something even better. This screen is not exactly 4:3. So when I scale the actual clip to fit perfectly, to the top and the bottom, I end up with a little bit of edge problem right there. I don't want to squeeze the video to fit it perfectly because my tracking was a little bit off. I don't care about this thing. You know, I can create a mask in this thing, right? Look. The mask moves with it because mask attached to a child, child attached to a parent, parent attached to the motion tracker from Mocha. Confusing enough? The advantage of this method over, for example, linking it the way I did it earlier, is I have the world of options to fix this thing. For example, I can fix the mask really perfectly at the edge of it. This is like a photographs, isn't it? Single frame that I can zoom in, and with this precision, I can adjust it. Who cares if the background gets a little bit cropped out? I don't care. Right there. As long as I got the tracking data, I'm fine. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people just try to link in the two layers and then they realize if they're not perfect with perspective or edge doesn't look right, they run into major issues. The edge wobbles and whatever. I don't care on this thing. By the way, the mask, you all know better, has an option called a feather, right? So I can make the edge a bit more feathered. And when I play it, it should look like this. The edge looks perfect. So you have a monitor within a monitor. Let's take a look. How does that look like? Again, I'm not trying to, blend things completely to make sure everything look correct using a blending mode and anything else like that. Not in this case. But I just want to show you how well you can track it. There's no way in Adobe After Effects you can track that directly. I've done it before. I just wanted to see, could I? Sometimes, I have nothing else to do. I try to challenge myself. See, can I do this thing? By the way, I can track the track. It's kind of funny, isn't it? With the new Mocha, I can do something even crazier. I can create a pre-composition out of this thing. Mr. Monitor. Now I can go to, look, this one doesn't have a Mocha. I can apply a Mocha to this thing, send this thing, and then I track the inner one. And if I repeat the same thing, I have the second monitor sits in the middle of it. I have a second monitor. I cannot just duplicate this layer. Trust me, it won't work that way. So let me show you a final of this thing that I've done. The reason I got to show you the final version of this thing, maybe I should import the project, because it'll take much longer to do it. And I don't have time to repeat the same thing twice. It'll take forever. But I believe is here. Look at this one. This is the same project. Now look at my first one. This. Then I create a pre-composition and I send it to Mocha again. Now look, I have two pre-compositions. So I send it to Mocha twice. Look what happens there. I put one within each other one. That look like this. I could do the same thing over and over and put a two more in there. Definitely you can. But if you keep an eye on it, you can create a very interesting video. You've probably seen a commercials like that, that camera flies to another one and so on. Because I need to show you the car, I'm going to move away from this project and let's start with the car. I'm going to start with the license plate. This video is very long, so I'm only going to do little part of it. I'm going to start from here, for example, to here. I'm just going to create an out point in the video. So I have it from here to here. This is a very long clip. Based on this clip, I create, let me double check my in and out point. My duration is, sorry, I need to take a quick look at my duration, my column, media duration. This is a 1 minute and 8. I need to create only the in and out point for it. So I'm just going to use the, I need to create a new composition. That's the problem with this thing is if I use an insert or override, yeah. Yeah, this duration is good, but I need to make a new composition out of this thing. I can't just drag it to the new composition unless I turn it into a composition. I'm doing it really backwards, by the way, because I don't want to go and type everything correctly again. So here it is, look. And don't worry about this thing. I don't need it from here. So I can delete that composition from here, but I still have it. There. So I have a composition that is exactly what I wanted. Well, that's like still way too long. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna make it work area like this. After Effects sometimes becomes a little bit tricky to work with it because it's not like a Premiere, right? It doesn't even use a insert and override. You use it in and out point, add it to the new composition. But if you try to make a new composition out of it, it just completely, as you saw, ignore what I've tried to do. But it doesn't matter. I have it there. I don't want to spend too much time with Mocha because it takes forever to render it. So I'm trying to simplify it. So I'm going to go to Mocha. I click on interface. Mocha starts, and I'm going to double check the duration. Oh yeah, see, Mocha completely ignored it because Mocha picks the clip itself. So if your clip is 20 seconds long, that's what you get. So I'm only going to track it by that much. I start by picking in a spot that is easy for me to see it. Right here. Because here is a little bit too late. I want it here. What's tricky thing about the car is the car actually warps. If you guys notice the shape of the trunk of a car, actually technically engine in this car is this way, and as the car moves, it drifting. That's why this is a very difficult one to do. So I'll start with this. This is more like a somewhere in the middle. I'll zoom to my screen. By the way, zoom in here is a control, just a magnified click and drag upward, something like this. Then I use my spline, and I need to select this part of a car, something that Mocha can track easily. This Mocha can track definitely. Should I add that one in there? Changes the perspective. Oh, we'll see. What about the exhausts? You know what? They have these loop here, these things for the engine cooling. That actually looks pretty good. So I'll make it into a shape I want. I'll put it right there. I will pull this thing to make it into a rectangle, just like that. And I'll try to adjust the shape the best I can. This doesn't have to be very technical. Yeah, I don't need the exhaust. I don't think I need that. I'll see. Something like this. Now, I'm going to enable the show surface. Show surface is the surface of the license plate I'm going to add in there. So this has to be matching the plate. One of the easiest thing I can do here is use the license plate itself as a reference. I'm going to zoom in more. And adjust this to the actual plate, because then I can see the perspective. If it changes, I can just track it based on that. You should be able to track it based on the logo or the whole rear of a car, but that looks okay. When I enable my grid look perfect. My grid now matches the shape of the rear of a car. I need to track it backwards because I haven't done the tracking from the beginning of a timeline yet. So the good news is I can do this thing. I will enable my perspective also in case, and I'll click on track it to see what happened. Remember, I need to test this thing. May work first time, may not work. So I'm crossing my finger. I'm going to see what it looked like. And this frame number, I don't really care about the frame number. What's the number here on time code? Okay, I'm good. It does it. It's actually pretty good. Have you noticed that it's actually doing a rotation? After Effects cannot do that. Not with the built-in. And when I'm looking at the grid, the three of them in the center and in a quarter on the edge, I'm looking at the pattern there. You guys can adjust the size of a grid, like scale the grid, but I don't recommend it. As you can see, my laptop, you probably can hear it. The laptop fan are going crazy. This is a very computer, oh yeah, 100% CPU. All cores are working together with the two graphic cards. Yeah, so this is not bad. This is not bad at all. I'm gonna go forward to see what it will look like. How far I can track it. That's actually getting much, much better. I'm not gonna spend too much time because I need to track something else also for you guys, and I have about half an hour left. So I'm gonna stop right here. I'll go to File, Save Project, and I'm gonna close. The reason I close this thing, I don't really need it because Mocha has all the tracking data in there. And yeah, the tracking data is good. So I'm just going to close the Mocha. And Mocha technically is in the memory, by the way. Mocha is running behind the scene. The Mocha engine is running somewhere within Adobe After Effects or outside of it. Somewhere in there, Mocha is running somewhere. Because the moment I click on a Mocha logo, it pops open. Look at it. There. My laptop is very fast, but not that quick when you're running the application. It takes a 2, 3, 4 seconds to open it. Not that quick. That's instantaneous. That means the interface is hidden, but is running behind the scene. When I expand the Mocha option, I click on Create Tracking Data. from a layer 1. Okay, notice that? The tracking data now is placed on the license plate. When I play it, the license plate is being tracked because that's what I intended to do. Now, I don't remember how much I tracked it. Well, I can look at the keyframes, obviously. I'll press U on my keyboard. Oh yeah, I tracked it. Probably that's good. My work area looks all right. Whatever it is, I'm just gonna go to here. Making sure everything's okay. Yeah, the tracking is good. My work area. Next thing I do, again, I'm gonna repeat the same thing. I create a solid. If I don't create, sorry, null object, not solid. If I don't create a null object and I create or I bring my license plate in there, you're able to use a license plate and use a corner pin to it. Bad idea, because you got keyframes locked into it and you won't be able to adjust the license plate to the car if you need to change a perspective. Unless your tracking data is 100% accurate, which I've never seen anyone create 100% accurate tracking data. Even in movies, they don't have 100%. You better create a null object. I'll go to the Mocha. Then I say, send the corner pin with the motion blur to, and I don't want to connect to any mask or anything else. I don't have a mask. I just want to say apply it. Now I have a null object with the keyframes right there. Again, I don't care about the size of a null object. I don't have to worry about that. But it looks pretty good. After Effects is playing it. Hopefully it's not going to crash because when I'm clicking on the timeline, it's not responding. Maybe he's still playing it. Yeah, it feels like it locked me out from the controls. I cannot click anywhere. So there you go. Because I can't click on anything else except After Effects is stopped. So I need to close After Effects. Oh, okay. It's really a strange thing. When I click on a task, it let go for some reason. It was really weird though. I've never seen it like this. Most likely I'm running out of memory. Oh yeah, knew it. I was when I was rendering it, it was probably hitting a 32 gigabyte. So After Effects tried to use the hard drive instead. If you have a less than a 32 gig RAM, make sure you have a very fast SSD or NVMe hard drive. So at least you can kind of piggyback on that. Otherwise, yeah, things may not work very well. I better save my project because if something happens, I don't want to. So let me just save this thing on my desktop as tracker Mocha in case something goes wrong in next 10 minutes. I'm good. Everything should be okay now. I'm gonna lock the actual layer. I will go get a license plate. I'll drag it in there. License plate definitely I made in Photoshop. I always make things way larger than what I need. And I don't know about the size at the moment. all I want to do is look at the corner pin and look at the transform. The thing is, if I make the license plate a little bit smaller so you guys can see it. If I make my license plate a bit smaller and I link them, as the car goes, the license plate goes with it. But license plates need to be fitted perfectly on that spot. So I get an idea that some of you might find some interesting points in there. One of the filters that you do need to use to fit the license plate, let me reset it, to the car itself is the corner pen filter. That's right. Corner pen filter does this. Effect, distort, corner pen. Corner pen give you a 4 anchor point. I use this in Adobe Premiere quite a bit too. When you try to fit logos and stuff like that in a wall, corner pen lets you to work stuff like this. So think about it. If I reset my shape like this with a corner pen, I can make this thing half transparent. So I can see it. Then open the corner pen filter. I zoom into it, grab this point here, grab this point. I should not move it. Sometimes it's easier to move the point, you see points by this icon because you may accidentally grab the bounding box. I can actually even escape the whole thing and do this thing instead. Why I never thought of that? Just using an up left, click here, up right, click here, lower left, click here, lower right, click here. How does it look like? Of course, I can do minor adjustments to it later. Then I can put the opacity back to whatever it was. Obviously, color has to be corrected. You'll notice that. But this is just the tracking part. Now, obviously, I haven't done anything to it. What I want to do, I want to make sure the license plate tracks the null object. Now, I have two options. I can use it as a parent, or I can link these guys to it. Let's see. If I parent it, parent locks everything, unfortunately. The position, the scale, the rotation. So that might be better in a way. See? Let's take a look. Oh, do you see a scale? Yeah. No. Maybe the parent is not a good idea. I'll turn the parent off. And I open the corner pin. And I link them. The problem with the corner pin linking is everything I've done with the corner pin in here will be ignored, which is fine. This one to this one. Don't worry, things will look really weird because I need to adjust the corner pin directly. That should be all right. So let's take a look. Where is my, oh yeah, see my license plate went up somewhere else. Yeah, the corner pins are left, right, lower left. I'm just checking it, right? Making sure everything is correct. This is correct. Upper right, correct. Lower right, correct. Yeah, these are fine. And then I need to connect the transform. If I do that, this should appear where the actual object is. I'm gonna double check it. Position to position. A scale. Ooh, a scale to a scale gonna be a bit tricky because I wish I could just adjust the scale. And then the rotation to rotation. It's getting better. Look. So the only thing I need to adjust right now is the anchor point, which is fine because I never really linked the anchor point, right? So if I adjust my anchor point of a license plate properly, it should perfectly line up. Like this. Bring it down a little bit. So let's take a look. If I play it, it should maintain the perfect link to it. It should not become scaled or anything like that. It does work perfectly, see? The other one, when I parented, look, when I parented, you guys saw something happen to it. It was scaling down. So yes, it's a more work I have to do, but at least guarantee the perfect result. The rest of it should be easy. I mean, you got to color correct it, and if I use a proper blend and proper color blend, you got to be careful. Don't use a blend like overlay, whatever, because the background was black. It's not going to look pretty good. If I use something like an ad or something like a screen, all of these things will blend to a black. It's not going to give you the proper result. What you need to do, you need to use an option, for example, like a color correction. I have to go to color correction, something like a lumetri, and I use a basic correction like exposure. I just need to knock the exposure down a little bit. I'm guessing, by the way, I'm not, I need to do a proper color correction using the scopes. Lumetri scopes. Without looking at the scopes, I am basically not looking at it properly. So I need to find out where the highlights and shadows of this one is, and then be able to actually do that. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to do. One other thing I can do with the lumetri, I can definitely reset the license plate. And let me see if there's an option for a color match. Then I should be able to, under the curves, the option for a color match, or maybe it was a color wheel. It was a color wheel. Premiere has it. Yeah, the After Effects version doesn't have the color match, unfortunately. Oops. I thought they were the same. I've been told they are the same. They are the same, but I guess I'm missing a one thing called a color match. I guess in video you need to match the scene from one to another one, but for some reason After Effects missing that little checkbox that you can select the color match. But anyway, you get the idea about the motion tracking. Again, I'm not here trying to make things matches. Otherwise, I need to match the grain and so on to adjust it. But you see how much you can do with After Effects when it comes to the license plate. The one I'm doing right now is a very basic form. Let me turn this thing off. And that's what it look like. I know the colors don't really match pretty well, but it's a convincing license plate. By the way, I have to blur it because the car is not as sharp. That's the photo was very sharp. You apply a bit of a motion blur to it, it should be all right. Now the car door is the same thing. I have another clip for the car is this one. This one. If I want to put a logo, a fake logo on it, I'll literally select it. Again, I need to make sure my work area is smaller, but again, Mocha doesn't really care about your work area, so I'll send it over anyway. I'll click the interface, and in this case, I'll zoom into the car, and I need to track the door. Now, tracking the door is a lot harder than tracking the license plate because of obviously the shape of it. So I need to select something that Mocha can track. I think this air vent and this thing around the window looks pretty good because the door itself, this line is okay too, but I cannot rely on it. So I'll go with something look like this. Yeah, I will try to track this shape the best I can. I will even add the rocker panel at the bottom. I think that's what they called. The A pillar. Because, you know, the window itself and this thing has a distinct feature. I'll enable my perspective and then I enable my surface. The surface perspective has to be corrected because if I look at this thing, notice that this is more like a flat. So the logo will look towards us, but the car has a perspective. So I need to put this thing on the surface of a door. I need to make sure I get this thing right. The door, unfortunately for a car, has very nice design to it. So this part, this door is a concave, and this one is kind of weird. So I try to pick and spot, and I think at least perspective is correct. I think this looks all right to me. This. Now, if I use a window, unfortunately, window is tilted the other way. Make it kind of weird. As I said, this is a exercise I have to start thinking about it a bit. But the perspective should be all right. Yeah, looks all right to me. Well, let me see if I track it, what it looked like. By the way, I'm going to change my layer 1 to door. So that should be easy. Let's see. Crossing my finger. Looks actually pretty good. I'm going to stop. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because it's easier to see the perspective here. I'm going to go forward by tracking it more. Yeah, Mocha is doing a good job. Mocha is doing a really good job. I don't want to go too far with this. I will stop. File, I'm just basically exiting, saving it. And when I expand the Mocha track data, I select create track data from a door layer. I should have all the keyframes. There we go. As usual, I create. Should I create a null object this time, just for fun of it, or let's just skip the null object. I grab the logo. Let's see what happens if you guys don't create a null object. My logo is Illustrator logo, so everything looks good. I'm able to still link this thing to a logo. by using the options like this. It should work still. There. At least for the amount of data I tracked. The thing about the logo right now is I have a lot of keyframes. This logo has to be here, and if I want to scale it, whatever, I can't. Because a scale is keyframed by Mocha. But the logo is too small. The logo is supposed to be size of the door. I can use an anchor point and place it where I want it, but it's too small. I got stuck. I cannot even do anything with this thing. No, that's not going to happen. Now you know why in a motion tracking world, we rely heavily on null object. I select a null and I connect the keyframe to it. Now here it is. My tracking data stops here. So what I would do is, because I didn't track it all the way, I'll make a work area around here so I don't have to go past that point. And I zoom into this timeline. Something like this. So it's make us not to wait too long. There we go. That's good. Now I grab my logo. Again, if I parent it, the logo moves with it. In this case, I probably can get away with it rather than linking all the individual properties like a license plate, because license plate was a bit trickier. This should be all right. Let's take a look at it. If I scale it to a lower number, and by the way, I can enable the option here called collapse transformation. Collapse transformation resamples the Illustrator file and make it much sharper. So keep an eye on that. But you might lose some of the effects though, like, motion blur, stuff like that. And the beauty part is I can still move it and put it at the size that I really want it. I'll zoom into it. And I try to do something like this. I put the logo at the top of the door. And I try to scale it, making sure the bottom of a door also lines up with the logo. I'll make it a little bit larger. Then also I'll put the logo at, let's say, this end, right where the air intake is for the engine. I want to see when I play this thing forward, makes any adjustments to it. No, a little bit. You see it? It moves. But the top and the bottom moves too. You can see the top moves. So that's not good. Despite it looks all right, the parent not going to help me here. Just same thing as a license plate. Always give it a try. You never know. Because sometimes the motion is easier that way. Well, I guess we got to do old-fashioned way. Where is my old friend? Distort corner pen. Here's my corner pen, and my laptop is going crazy with the CPU. Oh yeah, it's hitting a thermal limit. But the good news is it doesn't slow down, so it stays at 3.9 gigahertz. Unfortunately, my MacBook Pro, when it gets too hot, it just basically slows it down to a level that is impossible to work with. This gets hot and loud, but at least it doesn't slow down. I'm going to press U on a keyboard to open all the keyframe properties of my Mocha. And you wondering why things, when I parent and link it, why things doesn't work, why things go sideways. Because when I'm grabbing all the keyframes and I link them, technically I'm doing a parent and a child linking. There's the one thing I don't, is the anchor point. The anchor point is the culprit. Anchor point is not being keyframed, and that's the problem. If the anchor point was keyframed, when I parented, everything will work properly. Because that's the black sheep here. It doesn't work. So I need to grab all the properties. Remember, once you're parenting something, all the properties of this thing, including anchor point, will be locked into it. You see that default anchor point for that is 640 by 360, but the anchor point for the null object is 0 by 0. That's why object starts shifting. Okay? That's why things start shifting around. But if I grab the link and link them one by one, then anchor point becomes a relative. After Effects doesn't care about it. So we can leave the anchor point and we can readjust the position as I want. I actually prefer that because I'm holding an option and clicking on those things, by the way. Option or alt click and grab a pick whip and connect the correct one. With the anchor point option that is off the hook on the logo, I can place it anywhere I want. So in a way, it's actually helping me. Most of the time when I'm doing the motion tracking stuff, I don't think about it. Like I can just talk about whatever. I can watch TV and do a lot of other stuff without worry, because this is just rotation to rotation, scale to scale, position to position. I mean, that's just a click and drag. Once I've done, it's right there. I got all the properties linked up. Did I link them properly? Yeah, so I will move the anchor point of the logo. Why this thing happens? Oh, this must be a bug. I've never seen things like that. This is a strange. Very, very strange. It looks all right, but when I'm moving an anchor point, well, every day you see a new thing. Yeah, this shouldn't happen. This is a weird one. I gotta admit, I've never seen this particular bug before. When I'm moving the anchor point of the shape, it's weird. Remember, I'm not able to move the position of the logo. If I lock the null object, I'm not able to move it because it locks into the null. So I'm not able to move the null neither because of null has a keyframe. So null has only one option available to me, is the anchor point. I can move the anchor point of the null around. Oops. See, I'm moving the position. So this is a tricky one. Yeah, if I drag anything, these all have keyframes. This is strange. It shouldn't have something like that. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time, but you saw the earlier, that's what exactly I did. Step by step, we worked on this one, and is same thing. Corner points, unless I connect the wrong one, which I highly doubt it. I just connect everything correctly last time, and this time is the same thing. I'm just going to double check it, which is upper left to upper left, upper right to upper right, lower left to lower left, lower right to lower right. That is correct. Which is weird, really weird. And then the position is connected to the null transform position. That is correct. scale connect to null scale. Correct again. And the rotation connect to the null rotation. Let me remove the transform for a second. And see, where's my logo? I should be able to move the logo around. Now my logo disappeared because the scale is way off. You know what? I'm going to reset the transform and then try to bring it. Oh yeah, it crops again. Eh? There's a weird cropping here. What does that come from? I remember the collapse transformation. I told you got to be very careful with this thing. I guess I don't even listen to my own advice. Yeah, this I thought gonna help. It doesn't. Sorry about that. But at least you learned something today. Sometimes some option you enable that try to help you, they don't. And sometimes the starting over is actually not a bad idea. This thing, I should be able to move the anchor point now. There we go. It doesn't cut it. I was wondering, like, what the heck? Like, why is doing that? So I can put the logo right there. Now you're wondering, okay, I need to scale it. This is ridiculous. This is just too small. It just looks pretty good though, especially if I use a blending such as soft light. It just looks actually on the car. But what happens if I want to scale this thing? Well, I got an idea. This may look a little bit strange because a scale of the null object is being keyframed. There's nothing I can do about it. And a logo, I cannot really scale it because the scale are linked. If I change a number here to something, it's just gonna go bounce back again. So I can make it to whatever size. The moment I let go, it goes back. I write the code in there. I say, you know what? Multiply the scale. If I'm looking for a times 2. This means you scale the number by twice. Now the logo is twice the size. Because whatever number comes to it, I just multiply it by 2. Of course, I need to adjust my anchor point. Now the anchor point becomes also trickier because the number of the anchor point the object moves is twice the normal number. I better lock it because if I move it a little bit, it moves twice faster thanks to the scale times 2. So here it is. It should be still the same spot. Yep. Now the moment I enable this thing to sharpen it up, it messes it up. There we go. That's the problem. That little guy there, collapse transformation. Apply a motion blur to it. Motion blur makes no difference in this case due to the fact this car moves slowly. So let me play the whole thing before I wrap it up. And here it is. You can put a logo on the edge of a car and you can go from there. If I needed a larger scale, because remember my null dictates the scale, and a scale is at 90-something%. A scale is being changed. And despite this is an Adobe Illustrator file, when you scale it, may not look pretty good. So I would recommend like a license plate I did. Always import stuff as a very high resolution. This is twice the size of a video itself and make it a high resolution document. This is at 200%. It's a very clean one. So try to do something like this and make it much better. I'm done for this session. There will be another Adobe After Effects class running at 1 o'clock. Hopefully see you guys in the next class. If I don't see you then have a great weekend. And best of luck. And hopefully you guys learn a couple of things in this series of classes. And bye for now.